Windows 8's failure was a result of an amalgamation of design and usability issues. From the badly designed UI to the unjustified removal of staple features like the Start button, Microsoft dropped the ball hard with its 2012 OS. Start menu is one of the staple Windows features. Every Windows version starting with Windows 95 has a Start menu except Windows 8. With Windows 8, Microsoft removed the Start menu and replaced it with a touch-friendly Start screen. As you might expect, the removal of the Start menu didn't sit well with the users. Furthermore, there was also no Start button on Windows 8, resulting in a confusing UI design. When users first started a Windows 8 PC, they were greeted by the new Start screen and not the desktop like every other Windows version before or since. This confused many users who were accustomed to a desktop with application icons, a taskbar, and a Start button. Furthermore, Windows 8 Start screen had a UI that was dominated by live tiles. Live tiles were app shortcuts that were implemented into Windows 8 to make the desktop OS more touch-friendly. Live tiles were an ingenious concept that replaced static app icons with dynamic rectangular shortcuts that could display real-time information like weather and notifications. Unfortunately, live tiles were never popular, and developers also didn't support the feature all that much. As a sign of how much users detested the Start screen, Microsoft did away with the Start screen completely with Windows 10. Similarly, live tiles were also shelved in Windows 11. One of the biggest issues with Windows 8 is the abrupt and sudden changes that Microsoft implemented into the OS. For instance, the Metro UI in Windows 8 didn't resonate with everyone. Additionally, the removal of the Start menu without any prior notice, the removal of the Start button, and the introduction of a new UI design language, among other things, were all radical shifts that caught users off guard. As a result, not many people upgraded. According to a report by Net Market Share in 2018, Windows 8 and 8.1 had a combined 7% install base, even less than Windows 7, which, at that time, was more than 2 generations old. In short, due to sudden UI and feature changes, Windows 8 demanded a significant investment of time and money to learn the new OS from both users and businesses. The bet didn't pay off, and Windows 8 could never come close to repeating the success of Windows 7. Even Windows 11, Microsoft's next-generation OS built for modern audiences, still has elements from the 90s. The problem of keeping legacy parts of Windows around was readily apparent in Windows 8. The OS had a curious and often distasteful mix of old and new UI elements. For instance, Microsoft introduced a new, modern Settings app in Windows 8, but the old control panel with the ancient UI still existed. Although the situation improved quite a lot with Windows 10 and now with Windows 11, Microsoft still has a lot of work to do if the company fully wants to leave the legacy elements behind. Microsoft designed Windows 8 to be usable on both traditional desktops and ever-growing mobile computing devices like tablets and 2-in-1 devices. But Windows 8 failed at both segments of the market. For starters, although the touch usability was enhanced compared to previous versions of Windows, it was far from being a touch-friendly OS. For instance, due to the overly flat nature of icons and typography, it was difficult to identify clickable targets. So many users often found navigating/searching for specific features hard. In 2015, Microsoft debuted Windows 10 without the unnecessary UI additions of Windows 8. The Start menu, as well as a traditional desktop, made a comeback and has stuck around to this day. That said, Microsoft didn't abandon all of its Windows 8 ideas. For instance, the Start menu in Windows 10 is a combination of a traditional menu design with Windows 8's live tiles. It not only brought the much-loved UI back but also got even more useful features. Windows 8, released in 2012, introduced several new features and a revamped interface, but it also faced criticism for various reasons. Here are some of the main issues with Windows 8. Lack of familiarity. Windows 8 introduced the Metro interface, which was a drastic departure from the traditional Start menu. This change confused many users accustomed to the classic layout. Compatibility: Windows 8 had compatibility issues with older software and hardware. Many users encountered difficulties in running legacy applications and connecting older devices. Touch-Centric Design on non-touch devices: Windows 8 heavily focused on touch-based interactions, which created usability issues on non-touch devices like desktop computers and laptops. Missing features: Windows 8 removed several popular features, such as the Start button and the ability to boot directly to the desktop. This caused frustration for many users. Learning curve: The new interface and changes in navigation required users to learn different ways to perform tasks, causing additional time and effort. Despite these issues, Microsoft addressed many of them in later updates and with the release of Windows 8.1 and Windows 10. However, the initial release of Windows 8 faced significant backlash due to these drawbacks. Reviews of the various editions of Windows 8 were mixed to negative. Tom Warren of The Verge said that although Windows 8's emphasis on touch computing was significant and risked alienating desktop users, he felt that Windows 8 tablets make an iPad feel immediately out of date due to the capabilities of the operating system's hybrid model and increased focus on cloud services. David Pierce of The Verge described Windows 8 as the first desktop operating system that understands what a computer is supposed to do in 2012 and praised Microsoft's no-compromise approach and the operating system's emphasis on internet connectivity and cloud services. Pierce also considered the Start screen to be a brilliant innovation for desktop computers when compared with folder-littered desktops on every other OS because it allows users to interact with dynamic information. In contrast, an Extreme Tech article said that Windows 8 was Microsoft flailing and a review in PC Magazine condemned the Metro-style user interface. Some of the included apps in Windows 8 were considered to be basic and lacking in functionality, but the Xbox apps were praised for their promotion of a multi-platform entertainment experience. Other improvements and features, such as file history, storage spaces, and the updated Task Manager, were also regarded as positive changes. Peter Bright of Ars Technica wrote that while its user interface changes may overshadow them, Windows 8's improved performance, updated file manager, new storage functionality, expanded security features, and updated task manager were still positive improvements for the operating system. Bright also said that Windows 8's duality towards tablets and traditional PCs was an extremely ambitious aspect of the platform as well, but criticized Microsoft for emulating Apple's model of a closed distribution platform when implementing the Windows Store. The user interface of Windows 8 has been the subject of negative reaction. Bright wrote that its system of hot corners and edge swiping wasn't very obvious due to the lack of instructions provided by the operating system on the functions accessed through the user interface, even by the video tutorial added on the RTM release, which only instructed users to point at corners of the screen or swipe from its sides. Despite this stumbling block, Bright said that Windows 8's interface worked well in some places, but began to feel incoherent when switching between the Metro and desktop environments, sometimes through inconsistent means. Tom Warren of The Verge wrote that the new interface was as stunning as it is surprising, contributing to an incredibly personal experience once it is customized by the user, but had a steep learning curve, and was awkward to use with a keyboard and mouse. He noted that while forcing all users to use the new touch-oriented interface was a risky move for Microsoft as a whole, it was necessary in order to push the development of apps for the Windows Store. Others, such as Adrian Kingsley Hughes from ZDNet, considered the interface to be clumsy and impractical due to its inconsistent design, going as far as considering it two operating systems unceremoniously bolted together, and concluded that Windows 8 wasn't born out of a need or demand. It was born out of a desire on Microsoft's part to exert its will on the PC industry and decide to shape it in a direction touch and tablets that allows it to compete against, and remain relevant in the face of Apple's iPad. In 2013, Frank X. Shaw, a Microsoft corporate vice president, said that while many of the negative reviews were extreme, it was a good thing that Microsoft was listening to feedback and improving a product. The American Customer Satisfaction Index, ACSI, reported a decline in Microsoft's customer satisfaction, the lowest it has been since Windows Vista. A preview merely for developers to test the basic elements of the platform and user interface. There is already a great deal set in stone whereby a vast number of users will hold back from upgrading. Death of the Start menu. The Start menu is gone. I can't put it any simpler than that, it simply is not there anymore. For over 15 years, the little pop-up menu in the bottom left of the screen has been transformed into a screen filled with tiles, replacing the home of services and applications in favor of Microsoft's new Metro user interface. As discussed only last week, users do not like change. Windows Developer Preview already takes time to get used to, even in light of a simpler, step-by-step installation to get users off the ground. But those users may be shocked to discover a new home for their applications, even if they are a swipe to the left instead of clicking on a solid point where the Start menu used to be. Office 2010 performs a similar function to the Start screen in the Windows Developer Preview. Just as you see the Start screen to take up your entire desktop estate, the Backstage menu in all Office 2010 applications takes over what you were working on in favor of primary focus menu options. Getting back to your work is only a click away, just as is the case in the Windows Developer Preview. But it does not feel natural, nor will it be obvious to Windows 8 newbies. Whether or not this was an indication of what was next, it remains to be seen. Netbooks still struggle under new hardware requirements. Installed on a fully fledged desktop PC with 8 GB RAM, along with a touchscreen laptop with 2 GB RAM, the one device that stutters under the weight of the new operating system is the 1 GB RAM netbook. Netbooks are limited in what they can do, sure. But there has not been an operating system, bar that of Ubuntu, developed specifically for the netbook. It is a new device in the soon-to-be post-PC world, and Windows development has missed a beat between Windows 7 2 years ago, and Windows 8 in a year's time. There is no doubt that the Windows Developer Preview runs better on a netbook than a non-starter edition of Windows 7. But Windows 8 still boasts the clunk and the heavy weight that Windows 7 does, with some bits stripped out and a new interface plonked on top. Windows 8 will arrive at a time when netbooks are dead. Netbook development has been slow, along with smartphone innovation in the past few months. But netbooks for now are still widely used and need to be fully accommodated as part of Microsoft's ethos in creating a next-generation operating system for every device, not just PCs, laptops, and tablets. Too much, too soon, a massive learning curve for new users. One could argue that the changes between leaving Windows XP and starting with Windows Vista was enough progression to make the operating system work. Had Vista acted and behaved like Windows 7, perhaps Microsoft would have taken a different path with the upcoming Windows 8 version. But for users, I'm worried that too much has changed for the mere neophyte, who has a massive challenge ahead to get to grips with an entirely new operating system, visually out of this world compared to past versions. Users will want to see a familiar desktop, rather than tiles on a start screen. Stuck between emulating a similar feel to Windows Media Center and that of Windows Phone 7, it is as though Microsoft presumes we have all used the mobile operating system first. For tablets, however, users will reap the benefits from the new start screen. But as the very vast majority of Windows 8 users will still be PC and laptop users, never mind the netbooks for now, one has to question whether Microsoft has its head screwed on the right way. Cloud-based profiles, what data, and where will it be stored? This is something that could restrict sales of the operating system in Europe if Microsoft is not forthcoming about its data protection and sharing practices. For those who log into Windows using a Windows Live ID, or native cloud support without the aid of Windows Live additional software, it carries certain data like settings, desktop wallpaper, and bookmarks into the cloud. This is not limited to Windows 8, per SE. Google Chrome also supports the synchronization of settings and applications across browsers. Content such as Windows settings, Metro-style applications and sign-in credentials will be ported to the cloud, but there is still a giant question mark over what data, for which Microsoft still has answers to give. It is not clear yet exactly how Mac data is ported to the cloud, whether natively or otherwise. Though users are given the option to use a Windows Live ID to connect with the Windows 8, Microsoft is still not entirely forthcoming yet with full details of where data is stored, and whether personally identifiable data will be uploaded to the cloud with or without the user's permission. But for now, questions loom over Windows 8's innate ability to connect to the cloud without third-party Windows Live Essentials support. Windows 7 pocketed away, Windows 8 just adds tablet support. The keyboard and mouse combination is key and crucial to the traditional desktop experience. But because the start screen is designed for as opposed to simply optimized for the tablet space, it seems that the keyboard and mouse have been left out to pasture. In short, it is surprisingly tricky to navigate the start screen without a series of keyboard shortcuts which, for the record, are not easy to find, and the mouse is practically useless beyond pointing and clicking. But the Windows Developer Preview is in effect Windows 7 on the face of it, with a few user interface changes. Users may not use the start screen that often, only to open applications and to check updating tiled content. But for now, thankfully the desktop experience remains. Windows 8 had a radical change in the user interface, which confused and frustrated users. The removal of the traditional Start menu in Windows 8 caused inconvenience for users. Windows 8 was optimized for touch screens, leaving desktop users with a clunky experience. The lack of compatibility with older software and hardware was a major drawback. Windows 8 was not well received by enterprise customers due to its focus on consumer-driven features. Thank you for watching this video.